Now let's talk about performing abilities and effects within WarBonds. Units, war camps, and settlements will interact with one another through performing of abilities. There are numerous abilities in the game, each specifying their own unique interactions between one or more in-game objects. In-game objects are units, war camps, settlements, terrain, and other types of things. Some abilities will be passive, some conditional, while others require activation costs to be performed. Passive abilities are continuously active, have no conditions or activation costs to be performed. An example of a passive ability is the Phalanx unit's wall ability. Conditional abilities are similar to passive abilities in that they have no activation cost, but must wait for certain conditions to be satisfied in order for the ability to take effect. An example of a conditional ability is the Valkyrie unit's Holy Crusader ability. Activatable abilities are those which have a time, effort, and resource cost that must be paid in order for the ability to be performed. Additionally, these abilities have targeting and conditional requirements that must be satisfied in order for the ability to be performed. An example of an activatable ability is Vagabond Golyar Aelbreth's Taunt ability. Let's further break down this Taunt ability to understand how it truly works. Each ability is going to have an ability name. In this case, the ability name is Taunt. There is always going to be a time and effort cost associated with an activatable ability. In this case, the time and effort cost is during turn. Some abilities may also list a resource cost. An ability's resource cost is an additional payment requirement that the player must make in order to perform the ability. The listed resource amount, which differs between each unique ability, is paid directly from the ability using in-game object, or, in the case of gold, paid directly from the controlling player. In this example, Golyar must pay 1 leadership in order to perform Taunt. After an ability's payment cost follows the remainder of the ability details. These are conditions, targeting range, effects, and potential rule clarifications of this ability. This is typically the largest, most important section of an ability. These details further explain how the effects of an ability are to be resolved. Many abilities indicate the target selection and conditions required to successfully perform the ability. For this example of using the Taunt ability, the player can select up to 3 enemy units as valid targets, as long as they are within the targeting range that is based on Golyar's presence of 3. An ability effect details what changes to the current game state that this ability induces. Effects can induce an immediate change to the game state or, in the case of Taunt, have a pending start of turn effect that will eventually affect the game state. For this example, a pending start of turn effect is poised to occur at the start of the targeted enemy units when they start their next turn. More details on start of turn in this round effects later on. You'll notice on some unit reference cards that there are keywords and gameplay terminology mechanics that will be marked in bold text within the ability's description. This indicates that further details and information, typically written in italics text, can be found within the player guide for that relevant unit, war camp, or settlement. In general, the italicized text provides technical clarity on ability usage. In most cases, it is not necessary to read the italicized text in order to successfully perform an ability. All players should start the game with an ability rules reference card. This card will remind the players of the various ability types and their associated timing and effort rules. These cards can be quickly referenced by players to provide clarity regarding the sequencing and resolution of priority rules when performing any given ability. All abilities within the game have an associated time and effort cost. An ability's timing indicates when an ability can be used, while effort indicates its usage limitations. The combination of time and effort also categorizes an ability as a particular ability type. When a unit, war camp, or settlement takes its respective turn, it has a limit to the amount of effort it can exert. It takes an effort to perform an ability. The amount of effort that all units can exert during their turn is performing a movement and performing one action ability. Once both of these ability types have been exhausted during a unit's turn, they must wait for the next game round to perform these ability types. To restate this in another way, during each unit's turn, they can perform a movement and perform one action. For war camps and settlements, they exert effort differently. War camp movement is performed differently from unit movement, while settlements have to perform their listed 1, 2, 3 sequence when performing abilities. Abilities can be performed in any order during a unit or war camp's turn. Performing an ability that takes an action can occur before or after performing a movement. In the event where 2 or more players want to perform an ability at the same time, this is through immediate abilities, they should first be resolved in the ability type's timing, which is further detailed in the immediate ability type, which I will cover later when going over the immediate ability type. If these abilities are of the same ability type timing, then they are prioritized based on the initiative table, giving the highest priority to the 1 initiative units and so on. Any ability that does not specify a time and effort cost is a passive or conditional ability. Abilities that are not unique to a unit, war camp, or settlement are known as universal abilities. I'll cover universal abilities later on. The movement ability type is as follows. Move the battle map piece of the active unit or war camp up to a number of spaces based on their movement speed, factoring in terrain movement costs of each space being moved into, and the unit or war camp's movement type. Performing a movement can only be done once per turn. A unit or war camp moves one space at a time across adjacent nearby spaces in a 4-way direction, north, south, east, or west. Players can choose to end a unit or war camp's movement early, even if it is able to move additional spaces. If a unit has flying, then they can also move into, across, or land from sky terrain as part of their movement. Units can move through their ally units but are blocked by non-small enemy units. Small units can move through enemy units. Units cannot occupy the same space with another unit. War camps can move through units but are blocked by settlement tiles and other war camps. The action ability type is as follows. Any ability that requires taking an action can only be performed once per turn by the active unit. Unless stated otherwise, all attack abilities require taking an action. Only a single action can be taken, i.e. performed, during a turn. Action abilities cannot be performed while another ability is currently being resolved. By default, attack abilities always take an action to be performed. The full turn ability type is as follows. This ability uses up both a movement and an action in order to be performed. If either a movement or action has already been taken, then a full turn ability cannot be performed. Performing a full turn ability only prevents movement and action abilities from being performed. It does not prevent a unit, war camp, or settlement from being able to perform other types of abilities. That is, during turn, immediate, end of turn, etc. The during turn ability type works as follows. This ability is performed by the active unit, war camp, or settlement during its turn. This ability is not a movement or action and may be performed while a movement or attack is being performed. Each during turn ability can be performed once per turn. During turn abilities that enhance a unit's attack can be performed during a duel or duel interruption. A unit, war camp, or settlement can perform multiple during turn abilities while handling their current turn. However, they cannot perform the same named during turn ability more than once. That is, they cannot repeat the same during turn ability. For example, free road movement can only be used once during a unit's turn, not 2, 3, or 4 times. The immediate ability type works as follows. This ability is performed outside of a unit's turn as long as no other ability is currently being performed. This ability has no limit to its usage so long as its payment and activation conditions are satisfied. Immediate abilities can be used before or after performing and resolving any other immediate, during turn, movement, action, or full turn ability. In the event where multiple abilities are attempting to be performed at the same time, immediate abilities have the highest priority and get resolved in initiative order. An immediate ability can be performed during another unit, war camp, or settlement's turn. A unit can perform their immediate ability during their turn as well. Immediate abilities can be used before movement starts or after movement ends. It cannot be performed while movement is occurring. Aside from the universal dual interruption ability, an immediate ability cannot interrupt another ability that is actively being resolved, including another immediate ability. Next is passive and conditional ability types. Any ability that does not indicate a time and effort cost within its ability details is either a passive or conditional ability. Passive abilities remain active because they specify no conditions or restrictions for when they are to be performed. Essentially, a passive ability is any ability that reads like its effects are always active. As an example, the Orphan Beast's nurture-inducing ability is always active while bestial units are within 2 spaces of it. Conditional abilities are passive in nature but must wait for the game state to satisfy its listed conditions to be performed. When this occurs, the aforementioned ability is automatically performed without any cost or effort by the unit. Also, a condition ability may be performed immediately, regardless of whatever in-game object's turn it currently is. The timing of these abilities are immediate, but have a higher priority when resolving. Any player may call out that a conditional ability must be performed when its conditions occur, regardless of whether they own or control that particular unit or ability user. During a duel, conditional abilities cannot be performed. The final ability type is that of end of turn. End of turn abilities are performed when a unit ends their turn, just prior to moving the current turn indicator on the initiative table. When multiple end of turn abilities must be resolved, the unit's owning player decides the order in which these abilities are resolved. Note that a unit that has its turn skipped, that is, a unit that is disabled, will not trigger any start of turn or end of turn effects or abilities. As indicated by its namesake, the timing of this ability occurs at a specific moment a controlling player decides to end their unit's current turn. Most units do not have a unique end of turn ability. However, units can easily acquire end of turn abilities based on the current terrain type that they occupy. As an example, forest terrain grants 2 healing or restocking 2 members if a plant unit ends their turn on it. In addition to the time and effort cost associated with performing an ability, there may also be a required resource payment that the player must make in order to perform an ability. A resource payment will always have the words pay or sacrifice preceding the resource amount and type to be paid. The listed resource amount and type, which differs with each unique ability, is paid directly from the ability user or from the player when the resource being paid is gold. If the listed resource cost of an ability cannot be paid, then that ability cannot be performed. You cannot spend what you do not have. As long as the time and effort costs, resource costs, target selection, and conditions are satisfied, the ability can be performed. The types of resources available for players throughout a game is that of gold, leadership, loyalty, supply, a unit's own health or remaining squad members, and then there are miscellaneous tokens that can be utilized as a resource type. Aside from gold, all resources are going to be held by their respective owning unit. That is, the resource will be placed directly on that unit reference card's portrait. In the case of the unit's health or squad members, the resource is manipulated by accumulating or reducing their damage. As long as a unit has the available health or squad members to pay or sacrifice, the associated ability can be performed. If the unit that is performing this health or squad member costing ability is to die as a result of this type of resource payment, their ability will be performed first before they die. In the rare case where this ability performing unit and one or more units are to die from the effects of the ability, the user of this ability always dies first. Regarding miscellaneous tokens as a resource type, some unique unit abilities may require a miscellaneous resource token to be paid. In these cases, the unit will specify how the miscellaneous resource is acquired or generated, typically as part of the effects of another ability that they possess. The details of how these miscellaneous resources are generated will also give a unique name to this resource token and indicate its associated color. These colors can be white, black, or red. Tokens of this type should be placed on the unit's reference card portrait, displaying the blank side up. Each miscellaneous resource is uniquely named. They can only be utilized by abilities which specifically reference their name. Unless specifically stated otherwise, a unit cannot lose their miscellaneous resource tokens except when being used as payment. The miscellaneous growth, war, and level tokens are accumulated and tracked on the initiative table beside their associated war camp and settlement. Some unique unit abilities can manipulate the gaining and losing of these effects. Some unique unit abilities will explicitly leverage these tokens as a resource payment. For each uniquely named miscellaneous resource, a single unit can hold a maximum of 6, as with leadership and loyalty and supply. Any excess uniquely named tokens gained beyond 6 will be lost. These black, red, and white tokens can also be utilized on units on the battle map to represent various pending or ongoing effects throughout the game. Many abilities within the game have an effect that persists for a period of time or will change the game state of a unit once they start their turn. For these types of effects, black and white tokens are used to serve as reminders that these temporary effects are still in play. These reminder tokens are placed directly on top of a unit's battle map ID piece. That is, the unit that is or will be affected by the temporary effect. These tokens are cleaned up at different points during a game round and typically persist for one game round. There is a semi-permanent token effect that is referred to as a curse. This type of effect uses the red token and is placed similarly directly on top of a unit's battle map ID piece to allow all players to easily track. Some token effects are named, making each of them a uniquely distinct effect. units that are currently affected by a named token effect cannot have another token effect of the same name applied to them. Thus, by default, token effects cannot be stacked onto the same unit if they share the same effect name. Only one token effect of the same unique name can be applied to a unit at any given time. Although optional, it is recommended to use these black, white, and red tokens to help track and remind all players of which effects are currently active. Any ability that contains start of turn text indicates that the effects of that ability persist until the start of the affected unit's turn, or the effects will immediately apply at the start of the affected unit's turn. In either case, once the affected unit starts its turn, the white token can be removed from that unit's battle map ID piece. Start of turn token effects do not get removed during the end of this round rule. An example of how a start of turn effect works, we're going to utilize the Adept Archers, and they're going to be targeting the Painbringers with their Mark ability. Mark reads as follows. Target unit within one space becomes marked until the start of its turn. Any unit attacks versus a marked unit gain +1 attack per turn. So, in this case, in order to perform Mark, the Adept Archers must first pay 2 supply, and now they can target a unit that is within one space of them. The Painbringers are within one space of the Adept Archers, so now they get marked, and because the text of the ability says, until the start of its turn, we place the white marker right on top of the Painbringers to remind all players that the Painbringers are currently marked and that this mark persists until the Painbringers take their turn. When it is the Painbringers' turn, the effects of Mark will wear off and will get removed respectively. While being marked, the Adept Archers can then proceed to make an attack because Mark itself is only an immediate ability. The Adept Archers can still take an action. So in this case, if the Adept Archers first mark the Painbringers and then proceed to attack the Painbringers, instead of getting 3 attacks, the mark will grant them +1 additional attack, therefore making 4 attacks, 1 damage each against the Painbringers. Any ability that contains this round text indicates that the effects of that ability persist until the end of the current game round. When the current turn indicator moves onto the end of this round effects slot on the initiative table, all black token effects can be removed from each unit's battle map ID piece. This is when their associated effects end, because a new game round is about to begin. As an example, we have here Maestro Sarah Carthage, and she has an ability called War Song, which creates a this round effect. The text of War Song is as follows. It is an immediate ability that requires paying 1 leadership. Sarah gains counter while ally units that remain within presence gain +1 attack per turn this round. So if Sarah were to activate her War Song ability, which is an immediate effect, she would spend 1 leadership first. The effects of it last for the round, and because the effects are focused on Sarah Carthage herself, the reminder token gets placed directly on her, indicating to all players that War Song is currently active. At the end of the game round, during the end of this round effects, this is when War Song and its associated effects would end, and we would clean up each of those respective tokens.